Maroon Spirit 954. This is week 12 of the 13 fiscal week project for the American Descendant of Slavery, aka the American Native Black. Today is December 16th, 2019. This is the 400th year milestone from 1619 to 2019. Tonight's Dr. Carter G. Woodson quote from The Miseducation of the Negro states the following. The Negro in his present plight, however, does not see possibilities until it is too late. He exercises much hindsight, and for that reason he loses ground in the hotly contested battles of life. The Negro, as a rule, waits until a thing happens before he tries to avert it. Dr. Carter G. Woodson, The Miseducation of the Negro. The Black Inventor. Today's Black Inventor, Mr. Lewis H. Latimer, invented the electric lamp, federal patent number 247097, September 13th, 1881. Mr. Latimer also invented manufacturing carbons, federal patent number 252386. And Mr. Latimer also invented the apparatus for cooling and disinfecting, federal patent number 334078. Tonight's definitions, or today's definitions. School, any institution at which instruction is given in a particular discipline. Education, an enlightening experience. American, noun, a native or citizen of the United States. Descendants, one who follows in the bloodline of an ancestor, either lineally or collaterally. Slavery, a situation in which one person has absolute power over the life, fortune, and liberty of another. Treaty, an agreement formally signed, ratified, or adhered to between two nations or sovereigns. Reparations, the act of making an amends for a wrong. The 5 Maroon historical points. Point 1. Their black skin made them easy targets to identify, so black became a badge of bondage. Point 2. Were Maroons and Black Americans escaping slavery or breaking the law? Point 3. Outlaw slave colonies were called Maroon colonies. Point 4. Maroon leaders were first and foremost military officers. Point 5. Maroons paid a small agricultural tax to be used for common defense. The 12 steps of recovery for the American descendants of slavery. A 13-week practical program of action for each American descendant of slavery. Step 1. Learn about the estate or estates your family originated from. Step 2. Who established that estate? Step 3. What nation and confederacy had jurisdiction over that area prior to the European? Step 4. Ask all nonprofit organizations you attend what's your position on reparations. Step 5. They either support it or they don't. No support, no money. However, if they support it, then immediately children and adults need weekly classes free of charge about steps 1, 2, and 3, and field trips to ADOS landmarks in that city, county, and state. Step 6. Don't support European holidays for the remainder of the year. Step 7. Avoid spending money with any small business that doesn't hire your people. Step 8. All businesses need operating cash. Spend money with American black businesses. Step 9. All other groups rely on our energy and operating cash to survive. Set the trends of making other groups follow our lead and support our clubs, services, products, and entertainment. Step 10. The U.S. government is bankrupt. The Federal Reserve prints money, i.e. quantitative easing, It also burns money, i.e. quantitative tightening. The U.S. dollar hasn't been backed by gold since Richard Nixon in 1971. The government operates off the full faith of its citizens to pay debt and taxes. American descendants of slavery no longer have faith in the United States government. This is why financial support will be altered, stopped, and redirected. Step 11. Teach your kids 1 hour a day about their history on this land. Subsection A. Have them learn about a black inventor. Subsection B. Have them know about our heroes. Subsection C. They should know the European that conquered the estate you live in. Subsection D. They should know the nation of people prior to European invasion, militarily and culturally. Step 12. Practicing these steps will educate us on the land we're claiming America and attaches us to the history and laws of the United States government. Every estate American descendants of slavery live in should have steps 1, 2, and 3 advertised via social media, radio, and newspaper. This in 13 weeks, 1 fiscal quarter, will bring us together for our common cause. All right, so the last video we talked about the Seminoles leaving out of Mexico and re-entering under the legal construct known as the United States government. Of course, we know that Mexico is a part of North America, the landmass. This video is probably, for me, next to the Emancipation Proclamation and next to the first 3 Seminole Wars, the Emancipation Proclamation, and this video that I'm about to do tonight. I'm going to do my best to stay measured because this puts in perspective American blacks' religious belief. I've always been intrigued that history and law goes together. When I first heard that, it made sense to me. And one of the things that American blacks like to do, and we don't realize we do it, is we'll start off talking history and we'll either drift to another landmass, which would be Africa, or we'll drift into religious texts. History and law go together. History and religion do not go together. And we're going to find out tonight why that's true. All right, so we know that the Maroon Nation and the Seminoles and the Seminole Nation, those black Americans, they came out of Mexico. They came back into this portion of North America, but it was already under the United States government. All right, so black Seminoles were building homes, churches, schools, and businesses, planting and harvesting crops. So after the Trail of Tears, that Seminole Nation and that Maroon Nation, they kept their skills intact. So during the Reconstruction era, which is what we're going into now, we're going into the Reconstruction era. Immediately after the Civil War, we go into the Reconstruction era. We have those black Americans immediately picking up, trying to rebuild what had been burned and destroyed when they were forced to leave Florida and go west of the Mississippi River. 1866, John B. Sanborn, Commissioner of the Indian Affairs, reported that freedmen are the most industrious, economical, and intelligent. Well, that makes sense because notice that I'm always citing an American black inventor in the beginning of the video. So we know that we were the scientists and the mathematicians of that time. In the video prior to this one, when the Seminoles were leaving out of Mexico, the black Maroons and the black Seminoles were leaving out of Mexico, we learned about the black inventor who invented a wide range of the technology for railroad systems. So you got to understand, there was no railroad prior to the one in North America. We invented it. So when you look at trains that are operated in China and in Europe and Africa, Nevada, inside your airports, understand, we invented that. So yeah, in 1866, it makes sense that the Commissioner of the Indian Affairs would say what he said. We're the most industrious, economical, and intelligent. But we've been socially engineered during my lifetime, And with the invention of gangster rap and the sex culture and the drug culture, we've been reduced to criminals, music, and entertainment. But yet everybody around the world benefits off our inventions, including the electric lamp, which is the inventor that I mentioned tonight. So anytime you turn on a light in your house, just know an American black invented it. Next point. Black Americans wanted their kids schooled in the same classrooms as other members of their nation. We understood the power of tradition and culture. We still had that in place. This is during the Reconstruction era. We're going to school our kids, but we want them to learn amongst our own. So we were practicing segregation amongst ourselves before segregation became a law. We understood the importance of keeping our tradition and our culture and our heritage intact. Europeans became aware of the plains and grasslands in Native American territory after the Civil War. All right, so remember, it all ties in. At the end of the Third Seminole War, when Andrew Jackson, through the Trail of Tears, sent all those black Americans west of the Mississippi, they didn't know about the plains and the grasslands in the Midwest and the West. They didn't realize that until after the Civil War. Once they realized that, Europeans also joined Native American nations attracted by the cash and land offerings the U.S. government made to settle accounts with Native Americans. So it's like another new world. The new world is what they got introduced to when they hit the east coast of North America. They established their 13 colonies. Several wars popped off while they were establishing their 13 colonies. The most important wars were the 3 Seminole Wars. Then after the 3rd Seminole War, we get the Civil War. And then after the Seminole War, they realized, oh, we got another new world. It's the new frontier. It's the Midwest and the West. So now Europeans, they were already infiltrating Native American nations prior to the Civil War to make sure that they were practicing slavery the way they wanted them to. Now they're about to infiltrate those Native American nations west of the Mississippi River because they realize it's a new world over here. Europeans seeking to increase their holdings and wealth set all the economic and legal rules to the game. So they've already got their legal construct called the United States government set up on the East Coast. Now they go west of the Mississippi River and they realize that there's a whole new frontier that they were oblivious to. So now they're getting ready to set the economic and legal rules to the game. I come back to the reality. Anytime another group of people can speak words out of their mouth and they become law, that's your God. They are going to set the economic and legal rules to the game. They're your God. Their word is law. In the beginning, there was the word and the word was God. I'm not religious, but I'm just saying their words become law, and then American blacks adhere to their words as if it's law, which makes them your God. Land seizures and slavery became perfectly legal, and non-European resistance in any form became illegal. So these are the legal rules they set up when they got west of the Mississippi River. They're taking your land, they're seizing your land, and slavery became legal. Even though the Civil War just ended, this is the way we're going to play the game. And non-European resistance in any form became illegal. These are the rules as they go out west. Law, the justice system, and military power protected their needs from non-white discontent. So the people whose land was being seized, what was protecting the European as they were taking their land? Their law, which made them God, their justice system, which is their courts, and their military power. So again, you're under military occupation. This is American history. This is not religion. This is American history. You were going to bow down to their judicial system. You were going to bow down to the words that came out of their mouth, which they considered to be law. Or you're going to bow down to their military power. Outlaws were people who abandoned any effort to live by the European law. So you either obey the words that come out of the European's mouth on foreign land, because he's on foreign land. He's from Europe and he's in North America. So if you don't want to adhere to the words that come out of his mouth, then you're deemed to be outlaw. You're outside of the law. Well, whose law? The Europeans' law. In his mind, his law, he's God. He's your God. What he says is right. And here we are in 2019, December 16th, still perpetuating that reality. 1871, Congress decided to sign no more treaties with Native American nations. 6 years after the end of the Civil War, the legislative branch of the United States government, Congress, decided to sign no more treaties with Native American nations. Instead, Congress decided to treat all Native Americans as wards of the state. That's the same position that American blacks are in 2019. You're wards of the state. Well, they did it first with the Native American nations that they went into treaties with. They came under strict federal control. Doesn't that sound familiar in 2019 with the American blacks? Aren't we under strict federal control? Don't you pay taxes we pay taxes to a government that has enslaved us and stole everything from us. You're under strict federal control. The United States Secretary of the Interior, Columbus Delano, look his name up, Columbus Delano, in his policy, quote, "It's our duty to coerce Native Americans into adopting our habits and customs." Here we go back to the Europeans' word being law. United States Secretary of the Interior, Columbus Delano, in his policy, quote, "It's our duty to coerce Native Americans into adopting our habits and customs." 4 million buffalo were killed, and hides that sold for $30, Europeans sold for $1. So as the European went west of the Mississippi River, they quickly realized that the natives were living off buffalo. So what did the European do? Killed 4 million buffalo. The Native Americans were selling buffalo hide $30 a hide. The European comes out, kills the buffalo, and then shorts their market by selling it for $1. This tactic drove Native people to wandering poverty and dependence on federal aid. You shorted their market and made them dependent and wards of the state. 1876, Congress agreed to withdraw all U.S. troops from the South. So the legislative branch of the United States government, which is where Congress resides, they decided to withdraw all U.S. troops from the South in 1876. This returned all legal power to the Confederate States. They left you hanging. Because remember, you were emancipated under Abraham Lincoln to either fight for the Union or to labor faithfully for reasonable wages. So at the end of the war, you're laboring faithfully for reasonable wages at this point because the war is over with. And then the Union Army withdraws. They left you hanging. So now you're not protected. The same people that you were running up on and killing, now you have no protection, because remember, the only people that were protecting you during the Civil War under the Emancipation Proclamation was Abraham Lincoln directly, or his military, his army and his naval authority. So once the army and the naval authority withdrew, you on your own. This ended our protection of constitutional rights. Yeah. Yeah. So now you just laboring faithfully for a reasonable wage. Still not owning nothing. Here's the key, people. 1876, Congress withdrew. Right after 1876, and Congress decided to withdraw the U.S. troops from the South, here's the icing on the cake. 1887, Congressman Charles Dawes, General Allotment Act, aka the Dawes Act, which is where you hear people talk about the Dawes roll and the $5 Indian. They didn't go deep enough. The $5 Indian, nah, it's deeper than that. Let's go. The act passed Congress to Christianize and reform savages. What else is it going to take, people, in 2019? American blacks, my American descendants of slavery. Those of us that continue to try to hold on to the religion of Christianity and try to insert that book as if it's real history. History and law go together. From now on, any American black Christian that tries to use the Bible from as a historic reference point, 1887, Congressman Charles Dawes, the General Allotment Act. That's all you got to tell them. Read the General Allotment Act. The act passed Congress to Christianize and reform savages. That was not your religion, American. Their word, which is law, under their government, in 1887, your religion, whatever it was legally changed by Congress. The act passed Congress to Christianize and reform savages. The Dawes Act ordered the largest American property transfer in history. The claim was Native Americans couldn't take care of their lands. You already shorted the market with the buffalo west of the Mississippi. You're selling hides for $1 where the Native Americans were selling it for $30. So you starve them out. You make them wards of the state up under strict federal regulation. Then you turn around and you pass a law to Christianize and reform the savages. My. They did a hell of a job, because here we are in 2019 and we don't even know this reality. And people say your history isn't really that important. Your history is vitally important, because without knowing your history, you just a group of niggas. You don't know what's been done to you. You don't know the land. How you gonna get reparations and you don't know your history? You don't know that you don't know that all of North Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, you don't know that all that was Spanish territory. That's your land, nigga. But if you don't know your history, only thing you concerned with is a check. No, we got land, intellectual property, all the inventions. We should have ownership and profit to all of these inventions that our ancestors invented. The light bulb, the railroad, motors, transmissions, automatic brakes. Come on, refrigeration apparatuses. All of this is ours. But we let another man tell us what to do. He wasn't wise enough to create it himself, but he told you that you can't have it, even though you created it and you rolled with it. No, your history is very important, because without your history, how you know what's been stolen? So your religion officially was over, American black, in 1887. And Charles Dawes, the General Allotment Act, that's when you lost your religion, black man. That's history, and that's law. A few Native Americans received 160 acres per family, but unfamiliar with U.S. legal language, they were brief landowners. In less than 50 years, they lost 90,000 acres of land, 2/3 of what they owned. Millions of acres passed to Europeans seeking the American dream. Millions of acres passed to Europeans seeking the American dream. So Europeans coming from the continent of Europe on ships, the ones they told you that you was on, they were on the ships because they're not from here. They come over here. The law in the game was already set up that when they hit the ground, they got free land. Millions of acres of land. Seeking the American dream. The most land went to railroad builders and speculators. So let me get this straight. American blacks invented what we know as the railroad. I've already cited in the previous video the American black inventor that invented the railroad, yet we invented the railroad, but the land went to the railroad builders and not us. Under their law, we invented. We don't own it. We don't accumulate any of the wealth from it. Interesting. Native Americans were economically crushed. In the name of Christianity, education, and assimilation, it carefully destroyed the family and community life. They brought their lifestyle from Europe and made it law in 1887 under Charles Dawes. And what ended up happening in the name of Christianity, education, and assimilation, it carefully destroyed the family and community life. People, this is proof of claim right here. We were not Christians prior to the European coming to North America. We were not Christians. And in any of these videos, I'm not talking about religious belief because I deal with fruition and I deal with science and math. I don't deal with belief. Kids believe and hope. But I'm just talking to my people right now. It's time out. This is part of the 400th year milestone and waking up and stop playing games with these people. These institutions need to be working for us. If you attend a religious institution and it happens to be a Christian entity and you're putting money in the collection plate, yeah, it's time to ask the question at the next business meeting, because all institutions have business meetings. What's your stance on reparations? We were indoctrinated into this starting in 1887. It became law, which was passed through Congress and Charles Dawes. Period. End of discussion. Children were taken from parents and sent to school. Protestant missionaries. Children were taken from parents and sent to school. Protestant missionaries. Separate you from your parents. That way you won't know anything about your history. Yeah, we're going to school you out of your family education, culture, and tradition. That's how you broke that first generation. That's how you indoctrinated them. You kidnapped the kids from the parents. Siblings were separated from anyone who spoke their language. Yeah, that's how you break a people. That's how you indoctrinate a people into your belief system. You separate them from their parents. And anybody who spoke their language, we're going to isolate you because we need you to learn English. This is how it went down. All of this happened right after 1887. This is when it went down. This is when the schooling started and the education stopped. History and law go together. Far from home, children learn Christianity and private ownership. Far from home, children learn Christianity and private ownership. To avoid slipping back into the native traditions, they weren't sent home during the summer. To avoid slipping back in the native traditions, they weren't sent home during the summer. So we're basically kidnapping your kid, making sure we keep them away from anybody who speaks their native language, their native tongue. And we're going to make sure that we indoctrinate them with a whole new language and God, because we're not even going to let them go home during the summer. We want to completely disconnect them from their heritage and their tradition. This is how we were broken. This is history, and this is law. 1889, T.J. Morgan, Commissioner of Indian Affairs, quoted, "Each southern state enacted laws that denied voting, holding office, serve on juries, or exercise any rights of citizenship." 1890. Each southern state enacted laws that denied voting, holding office, serve on juries, or exercise any rights of citizenship. This has to be fixed. See, it's a two-part sword. Not only does it have to be fixed, but we have to have our own nation. We have to. We have to come up with our own. This, what happened to us and what happened to Native Americans, is horrible. We're under military occupation, American black, and you run around promoting something that was forced on you legally in 1887. Charles Dawes in Congress passed legislation that was going to force Christianity on you. That's it. We can drop the mic after that. That's it. Game over. It's time out. The Dawes Act. I'm going to drop a link in the video. Just like most American blacks never read the Emancipation Proclamation, we need to read the Dawes Act. This is American history, people. How can your people be here for hundreds of years on this land and we don't know important documents that destroyed us, like the Emancipation Proclamation, like the Constitution of the United States government, like the Dawes Act of 1887. Yeah, this needs to be commonly talked about in our. See, this is why we're in the nigger state. This is why we're in the nigger state. We really don't understand how medieval this government has been against us, but we're waking up. This is the next to the last video. Next week will be the 13th week as we close out the fiscal year 2019. I set a goal, and I got one more week till I complete the goal. Every week, I took time to be of service to the youth and to my people. No frothy emotional appeal, not concerning myself with what's going on in the news, or it's all negative anyway when it pertains to American blacks. If it's not entertainment, we're not hearing about any real success stories. So we stay focused on American history. That was my goal. That was this project. Hopefully, if you learn anything about the history of the South, more in particular Florida and Georgia, the Seminole Wars, the Emancipation Proclamation, how all of this ties into the Trail of Tears and the Indian Removal Act, Andrew Jackson on your $20 bill. He's one of our number one enemies. Ulysses S. Grant on the $50 bill, a Confederate officer. He's one of our enemies. You see, we walk around and we just don't know our history. And we downplay it. But that's what makes us niggas, and that's what puts us in last place, because we have no knowledge of the history on this land. But we're changing that slowly but surely. And this is what it looks like to set a goal and to walk it down 1 day at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 month at a time, 1 year at a time. Instead of being out there acting a fool, doing nothing constructive, 2 hours a day. 2 hours a day to do something constructive, to put something positive back in the atmosphere. So I'm closing out this video. And 1887, Charles Dawes, Congress passed it and made it legal that we had to practice Christianity. That's it. Moving forward, we got to start hitting these religious preachers and pastors. We got to start hitting them with the law. History and law go together. It's time out. In order for us to grow up and take our position on this land and in society, the one that we should really have, because we invented most of the stuff that we use today. In order for us to do that, we have to look at what our ancestors did. We have to look at the road that they paved. With that being said, we are the gods.